a small plane, and two men, and a mission that was not only life-threatening but seems absolutely impossible today. The strange dream of a Las Vegas hotel owner to keep an airplane in the air, not for hours, not for days, but for months without touching the ground. Here, the problem wasn't just about fuel. This is a story of lack of sleep, the cold of December, and maintaining a delicate balance between life and death. But the question is, did these two pilots really manage to break this seemingly impossible record, or did they disappear forever into the blue sky? An extraordinary incident in history that has now been lost in books. Welcome once again to Mystery Hub Videos. In 1956, a man named Warren Bailey opened his own hotel in Las Vegas, which was quite different from other big casinos and hotels in the city. This was because simple rural folks used to come here. Named Hacienda, the hotel wasn't very expensive, which is why regular people preferred it. But since the profit margin was low, Warren Bailey constantly thought of new ideas to promote his hotel. One day, his Army pilot friend Bob Timm suggested that breaking a world record could bring good publicity for Hacienda. He was hinting at flying a plane that would remain in the air not just for days, but for months without landing. Warren liked the idea, but could it really promote the hotel? And more importantly, how would it be possible? Here, it's important to understand that when airplanes were first invented, their flight time was recorded in seconds. For pilots and mechanics, it was important to know how long a plane could stay airborne. With time, airplanes became more advanced, and so did their flight times. Eventually, the only limiting factor was the fuel tank, meaning the larger the fuel tank, the longer the flight. In 1923, the US Army solved this problem by refueling a plane mid-air from another aircraft. Soon after, the first endurance flight record was broken. A TH-4B plane refueled mid-air 9 times and flew nonstop for 37 hours, setting the first record. This started a new wave of breaking endurance flight records. America became obsessed with endurance flights. In 1929, the record was broken 5 times. But by the time Bob Timm suggested the idea to Warren, the craze for breaking this record had died down, because now it wasn't about the limits of fuel tanks or engines, it was about testing human physical endurance. Bob Timm was talking about breaking the record set in 1949 by 10 Navy pilots who flew a plane named Sedan for 46 days straight. Their mission got significant media attention. Warren, the owner of Hacienda, found the idea perfect for promoting his hotel and requested Bob Timm himself to carry out the mission. After all, Bob was a well-known World War II pilot. Timm first went to McCarran Airport, where he bought a Cessna 170 airplane and hired a mechanic to modify the plane for endurance flight. First, they removed the co-pilot seat. Since Timm would be in the air for over a month, he'd need a co-pilot. Both pilots will fly the plane in shifts. When one pilot is handling the controls, the other will lie down and sleep on a form pad in place of the co-pilot. They even removed the bench in the back row and created an 8-square-foot storage area for essential supplies. In one corner of the cabin, they installed a small sink so that they could take sponge baths in the 4-foot-high cabin. They also installed a 95-gallon belly fuel tank so that, in addition to the wing tanks, there would be an extra floor tank. To refuel this tank mid-air, they added an electric winch that could pull up the fuel pipe. They replaced the co-pilot's door with a folding door to allow easy access to the belly tank's fuel port. In today's time, hanging from a flying plane can only be seen in movies, but back then, it was a common sight. By 1950, aerial stuntmen had already performed scenes involving jumping from one plane to another midair. To make refueling less dangerous, they built a small folding platform outside the co-pilot's door so they could stand and connect the pipe to the belly tank port. This platform was the only place on the plane where one could stand upright. Inside the Cessna 172, you could only sit or lie down. They made significant changes to the plane's engine as well and painted the word Hacienda in large letters on the aircraft, since promoting the hotel was the mission's primary goal. Next came the test flights. In the summer of 1958, test flights began, but problems emerged one after another. The first co-pilot Timm hired didn't get along with him. They often argued during flights. The first test flight failed, the second one also failed, and during the third, the two had such a serious dispute that Timm fired the co-pilot. The main issue was with the plane's exhaust valve, which kept overheating. They had already launched the mission 3 times, but failed badly each time. On top of that, while he was busy attempting his failed test flights to set a world record, at the very same time over Dallas, two pilots named Jim Hett and Bill Burkhart had already succeeded in setting a new world record by staying airborne for 50 days in the same Cessna 172. By December, Timm had resolved the plane's issues. Finally, on December 4, 1958, Hacienda took off from McCarran Field for its 4th attempt. At that time, officials from the International Federation of Automobile, FIA, were present there and monitoring the mission. To prevent cheating, Timm and his new co-pilot, John Cook, took off and then returned to the runways so that a special white paint could be applied to the plane's tires. If they tried to land secretly, the paint would rub off and the record wouldn't count. 12 hours later, it was time for the first refueling. They flew over a pre-designated road where a refueling truck waited. As soon as the plane aligned with the road, the truck driver pressed the accelerator fully. At that moment, the plane had to fly at its minimum speed, which was 100 kilometers per hour, because the truck couldn't go any faster than that. As the plane aligned just 20 feet above the truck, the co-pilot dropped the winch. The workers below connected the fuel pipe to the winch and pulled it up. They connected it to the belly tank port, and the truck was signaled to start the fuel pump. For the next 3 minutes, Hacienda and the truck moved side by side. During this time, even the slightest mistake, or if either one of them went even a little faster or slower, the result would have been nothing but death. Once the belly tank was full, the co-pilot threw the pipe back down, and they flew off into the sky for the next 12 hours. To break the 50-day world record, this process had to be repeated at least 100 times. Timm and Cook flew over Las Vegas for a few days so that if anything went wrong, they could land nearby. But when things seemed stable, they began flying over the empty deserts of California. Higher altitudes improve fuel efficiency, but come with freezing temperatures. Due to the modifications, the plane's insulation wasn't very effective, so they chose to fly closer to the ground to avoid the cold. Lower altitudes gave beautiful views, but at night, mountains and clouds could be deadly. Living together in such close quarters, the two pilots became good friends. In their free time, they read books, enjoying view, and chatting. During the twice-a-day refueling, they pulled up not just fuel but also other necessities, water containers, engine oil, and food prepared by Hacienda's chefs. Now, the question you might be wondering, what happened to the food they ate? So where did they go to the toilet? They had placed a folding camp toilet seat in the plane, with a waste bag attached underneath. Once the bag was full, they would discreetly empty it over the remote deserts of California. This was never publicly admitted by the pilots themselves, but after the co-pilot passed away, his wife revealed this detail. By now, Timm and Cook had spent 36 days in the air. They even celebrated New Year's Eve inside the aircraft. But signs of exhaustion and mental stress had started to appear. The two men were struggling in the cramped space of the small cabin. The constant drone of the aircraft's engine made it nearly impossible to sleep properly. One night, it happened that Timm fell asleep while sitting at the controls, just a few minutes before the co-pilot's shift was about to start. Amazingly, for the next whole hour, Timm didn't wake up and the plane kept flying straight solely on autopilot. When Timm woke up, the plane was flying at low altitude inside a canyon in an unknown area. If he hadn't woken up for a few more minutes, the plane would have crashed into the mountain ahead. because the autopilot could only keep the plane flying straight, but it couldn't avoid obstacles. On January 12, day 39, the aircraft suffered a major technical issue. The generator failed. This means that the radio, lights, heaters, and the system that used to pump fuel from the belly tank to the wings, it won't work now. The ground crew sent up a small wind turbine, but it only generated enough electricity to power the radios. For the remaining days, fuel had to be pumped manually by hand. With no lights, the refueling process at night became much more difficult, especially during the new moon, when there was no natural light. To solve this, they tied a flashlight to the winch so the ground crew could see where to attach the pipe. And about 300 feet ahead of the refueling truck, there was another truck moving, which had a searchlight mounted on it. But the problems didn't stop. The plane's fuel gauge broke, the tachometer failed, and carbon buildup had started in the engine. By January 23rd, the day when they were finally about to break the world record, the Hacienda Hotel started to receive the publicity, which Warren Bailey had dreamed of from the start. He published a schedule in newspapers listing when the plane would fly over major cities, so people could see it and record this historic moment. Once, he even sent up an entire plane filled with photographers to fly alongside Hacienda. They managed to capture some truly memorable photographs. To make the moment even more iconic, co-pilot Cook stepped out of the aircraft and pretended to clean the windshield while still in flight. Newspapers published the photo, and the entire country began paying attention to the flight. On January 23rd, at exactly 3:52, Hacienda officially broke the 50-day flight record. But after everything they had endured to get there, Cook and Timm made a bold decision. They would not land just yet. They would keep flying as long as the plane could hold up. And so they remained in the air for another 14 days. Eventually, the aircraft could go no further. On February 7, 1959, after 64 days, 22 hours, 19 minutes, and 5 seconds in the air, they finally contacted McCarran Field's control tower and requested permission to land. At the airport, a massive crowd had gathered. Reporters, officials, supporters, Timm's wife and children, and the entire staff of the Hacienda Hotel. Timm and Cook were so physically exhausted they couldn't even exit the plane on their own. The officials also confirmed that the white tire paint was completely intact, meaning the plane had truly remained in the air for 64 days without landing. In 2015, the FAA officially shut down the piloted endurance records because the risk of life-threatening damage was increasing. That means Timm and Cook's world record will now remain unbreakable forever. The Cessna 172, in which this world record was set, is still hanging today at McCarran International Airport in the baggage claim area of Terminal 1, silently telling its story to everyone who passes by. We hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and press the bell icon. See you in our next thrilling episode.